If a bog is anything, it is wet, or at least it should be. The accumulation of peat over thousands of years was only possible because the ground was waterlogged much of the time. The water excluded air and slowed down the decay of plant remains. The result was turf. This piece of bog oak has been buried in the bog, preserved in the peat. It is probably over 2,000 years old. When the water is removed, the surface of the bog dries out. Air fills the space that water used to occupy, and the peat starts to decay. The result is that carbon, locked away for centuries, is released to the atmosphere. The loss of water also has an impact on the ecology of the bog. In a completely natural state, the plants that are most frequent in the bog are those like sphagnum that are adapted to cope with waterlogging, with low levels of nutrients, and with an acid environment. As the bog dries out, the plants that did well before no longer have an advantage, and other species become more important. Millennia, sometimes called fionn or sedge, along with heather and gorse, all do better on a drier surface. These are all potential fuels for bog fires. Not only is a dry bog more at risk from fire, but the consequences of a fire can be more serious. On a wet bog, the sphagnum is like a big sponge. If there is a fire, a protective shield of sopping wet sphagnum protects the peat from the fire. With more fuel, the fire on a dry bog will be hotter, and without the protection of a damp shield of sphagnum, a hotter fire can burn into the peat. Underground fires can smoulder for weeks and cause permanent damage to the bog. The drying of the bog encourages scrub and trees like birch, gorse and self-sown conifers. These will dry the bog out even more. Eventually the bog will not be a bog anymore. It will literally have died of thirst. Bogs are often talked about in terms of capturing and storing carbon. But this is only true if the carbon being locked away by plants is greater than that being lost by fire, erosion and decay. If the loss of water causes the surface of the bog to become firm and dry, sphagnum, the main peat-forming plant, will become scarce. The result is that very little new carbon is coming in and lots of old carbon continues to go out as the peat itself breaks down. The value of the bog as a carbon store is diminishing fast. Drain blocking will help. It will slow the growth of millennia, heather and gorse and encourage plants that do not burn as easily. By raising the water table, we can encourage sphagnum. We can help to keep the carbon that has been locked away for thousands of years in the bog where it belongs. Drain blocking is for man-made drains only. Blocking natural streams is neither necessary nor appropriate. In Ireland, peat dams are the most common method of drain blocking. They are ideal for relatively shallow and narrow drains where the base of the drain has not reached down to the rock. Peat dams are created with peat taken from borrow pits near the line of the drain. The wet peat is inserted into the drain, compacted with the bucket on the machine, and topped off with the scrawl. The borrow pits should be kept as shallow as possible. In time they will become pools, habitats in their own right. If the drain is more than 1 metre wide, there is a risk that a peat dam could fail. In these cases, plastic piling or timber can be used to reinforce it. For a timber dam, cut a key into the bank, slot in the untreated sleepers, larch or oak are best. Hold them in place by pushing timber piles in with the bucket and the digger. Put a peat plug in front, another behind the timber, and cover the whole lot with peat. Compact it with the bucket and replace the scraw. A timber dam is also a good choice on steeper slopes and for the last dam at the bottom of a series of dams. However they are built, the dams need to be close enough to each other for the pool behind each dam to reach the base of the dam up from it. If you can see water trickling between the dams, then they are too far apart. The number of dams needed depends on the slope of the land. The flatter the site, the further apart the dams can be. The maximum number of peat dams is 10 per 100 metres. If you need more than this, the slope is too steep for blocking with peat dams. The pools behind the dams need to be shallow, ideally less than 50 centimetres deep. If they are any deeper, the pressure of the water may cause a peat dam to fail, and plants may be slow to establish in the pools. If the drain is too deep, it may be necessary to reprofile it by pulling peat from the top of the bank into the drain before replacing the scraw on the bank. The shallow pools created behind the dams will encourage the growth of plants. Over time, the accumulation of peat and plant remains will gradually fill in the drain and help restore the bog. Blocking drains will have little impact on adjacent lands. The re-wetting effect will only be apparent for about 30 metres from the blocked drain. What drain blocking will do is help the bog to hold on to water for longer. This will benefit drains and streams downhill from the bog. It will slow the water down. After heavy rainfall, the water will not all come down in a sudden rush. It will trickle down over a much longer period. Downstream watercourses and drains will be better able to cope with the volume over a longer time frame. This will protect riverbanks from erosion and reduce the risk of flooding. Grazing has an important role in many bogs. To reduce the fire risk, millennia may have to be controlled. In most cases, the only practical way to achieve this is summer grazing with cattle. For safety reasons and to prevent damage to the dams, cattle will need culverts to cross the blocked drains. Plastic piping is placed in the channel and covered with turf and scraw. If granite chips are available, they could be considered, but do not use limestone chips as they will damage the bog. A temporary electric fence will keep cattle out of the drain. A gate handle will be needed to prevent culverts becoming choke points where excessive poaching could occur. Water in the pools along the drain can be used to supply water troughs. Use a gravity flow system if possible. Locate the water troughs on shallow peat or on mineral soil or on existing tracks near the edge of the bog to minimize damage by cattle. Do not place water troughs beside gates or watercourses. It could lead to excessive poaching. Do not place them in deep peat or near stands of heather. There is no sense in damaging these sensitive habitats by drawing cattle into them. The bog is a resource. It has real value. It holds enormous amounts of carbon, far more than any other type of land. It provides grazing and regulates the flow of water. The bog supports wildlife and in some cases provides fuel. All of these functions are threatened by erosion and drainage. Managing the movement of water in the bog is essential to protect the bog for the future. Drain blocking is an important part of the toolkit that can help ensure that the bog continues to provide benefits for all of us.